IP security systems normally are meant to protect people, assets and environments or enhance business operations. If you are dealing with video surveillance, access control or something like automatic license plate recognition, you will certainly realize the flow of data from these IP security systems is increasing dramatically, and with it, the danger of cyber attacks. This is why we are talking about setting up the right security strategy and why there's an increasing demand to use a cloud platform with maximum resilience, a hardened security infrastructure that helps to comply with all data protection requirements. Welcome to our Computer Woche webcast in collaboration with Genatech and Microsoft, getting the most out of your IP security systems by leveraging the cloud. And as at the start, I want to invite you just to give us your questions as soon as possible. If you have any questions in this webcast, we have some polls for you, and we want to have you as an active part in this webcast. Of course, this is at the beginning. You have a small button down there where you can put in your questions, and I'll have a closer look on the dashboard too, where I can see your questions and address them to our speakers today. How we may benefit from the newest technologies in surveillance via cloud systems, that's what we want to discuss with the head of building industrial market segment in Europe at Genatech, Jean-Philippe Deby. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
And we have with us, and I'm very proud that I can present him, the General Manager EMEA for Microsoft IoT Device Experience, Soren Lau.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah, so just to step into discussion, we are facing distributed denial of service attacks of huge data amounts where thousands of gigabits per second are hitting websites and forcing them to shut down. But why is that important for today's discussion?
Yeah, well, I think you see the slide, or you click, well, you see the slide. I think the answer is in the title. So basically it's video cameras and network video recorders that were utilized to do a Mirai botnet attack on Brian Krebs' website.
Krebs is a journalist with the site krebsonsecurity.com. And the story is how hacked cameras are helping launch the biggest attacks the internet has ever seen. What does it mean? Yeah,
so basically what the hackers have done is that they, well, first of all, they found the camera quite easily on the internet. If you're familiar with the Shodan.io website, you know, I encourage you to go there. It's a very easy way to find devices. It's on the internet. And then after that, it's also, let's say, bad, what we call bad hygiene, but basically that a lot of people are not changing the default password on their device, which, you know, makes it very easy, let's say, for hackers to exploit the device and to do those type of attacks.
Yeah, so Soren, from the point of view of Microsoft, why is a topic like that more important than ever?
No, really appreciate that. And I think that, you know, at the highest level at Microsoft, our mission really is to empower every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. And if you think about that statement, trust is really at the core of that. Customers, we're putting the strongest commitment that we possibly can into making sure that customers can trust the digital technology that they use, both when it comes to privacy as well as compliance and everything that goes with it. And to really underscore that, we're building that into, you could say, the platform that we are providing as in Azure, the cloud platform that we're making available to actually a broader set of regions than any of our competitors are today. So we're taking that very serious. We are in 54 regions today, 140 countries across the world. Mm-hmm. So really to bring that trust all the way to the customers, even from a geographical perspective as well.
So many companies are facing challenges like integrating hybrid clouds like Azure Public Cloud. But the combination with IP surveillance systems or IP security systems, why is it new for IT specialists, for chief information or security officers?
This integration onto the cloud. Well, I think it's new because typically it was the security department that was, you know, in charge of the equipment that they were utilizing. But over the past years, I mean, we've seen, let's say, you know, very much an increase in the utilization of IP devices, which started to generate, let's say, questions also for companies such as Genatech, you know, on how you can better, let's say, service those type of solution. And it's really in the collaboration that we have, let's say, with Microsoft actually since the foundation of the company 23 years ago, that we've been in contact, understood, let's say, the benefit of Azure, understood the benefit of...
So you both have a long history together. Huh?
Absolutely, yeah. And understood the benefit of data transformation, and that really, let's say, provided us the impulse to to start to provide cloud solution. And we're not the only one, but we're definitely, let's say, a leading one there.
It brings me to my question: what is Genatech exactly? What do you give as a short advice for the audience? Where do you position yourself?
Yeah, so basically, Genatech is an independent software vendor. So we don't manufacture hardware. The only thing that we do is we develop software. We started by managing video devices, but since then, and as you can see on the diagram here, we've evolved also to manage access control controllers, also NMPR cameras, and you'll find also, excuse me, intrusion panels, IP intercom. So basically, we provide one platform that can manage all of the different type of sensors that you have, within your systems. As an organization, we're present in 80 countries. So Genatech, perhaps is not very well known to the audience, but we're very well known, let's say, in the industry because we're market leaders, let's say, in the different areas. And in terms of addressable market, I mean, we're really present in all sectors of society. So it can be users as part of city surveillance, transportation, airports, but we're also very present in the industry. So we're doing a lot of work in oil and gas, utilities, energy, retail, and banking. So.
And you're some sort of enabler for the clients just to use the Azure cloud in combination with IP security systems?
Yeah, I mean, basically there what we'll do, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, but we have, let's say, different options to utilize Azure. One of them being, let's say, a pure SaaS solution where effectively we take the responsibility of managing, let's say, the infrastructure on behalf of the customers.
Okay, so why is it important for Microsoft to have partners like that, like Genatech?
It's extremely important. As I talked about, our mission, kind of the double click on that is the way we view the world is becoming a computer. That's the mega trend that's happening from the old world of client and server into cloud. It is available everywhere. And in that scenario, we talk about an intelligent edge and an intelligent cloud. And we're focusing on providing the platform and the building blocks in order to make that to bring that scenario to life. Where our partnership with Genatech is an amazing example of that, is that is specifically the industry expertise that Genatech brings to the table in this specific vertical of security of security.
So bringing me back to the security issue, what challenges would you say do CIOs or chief security officers, urban planners, city managers, security experts, enterprise executives, and community leaders have to face before or while integrating IP surveillance systems? Yeah.
So there on this slide, you'll see, so security is definitely, let's say, one of the major challenges, rising challenges. We spoke about the issue around, let's say, the basic hygiene of system, but we'll talk a little bit later on about, data infrastructure, which is another, let's say, rising issue, as well as, how new regulation, let's say, like GDPR, are, imposing, are demanding, let's say, certain processes that, perhaps current systems are not able to fulfill. But that's one of them. Obviously, it's the major part of the talk today. But then we see, let's say, other demands. So, for example, the fact that there's more and more data available, so more sensors, but also more intelligent sensors. There's still, let's say, a big issue around the silos within organizations where, the security department does not necessarily speak with the rest of the organization.
This is what you mean with inefficiency?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that, information is not easily shared between different, business function within an organization.
And we have lots of on-premise infrastructures out there.
Yeah. And, one of the, one of the issues there is that because there are those silos, other organizations like real estate, for example, would need, let's say, certain type of information, which is going to push them to invest in certain systems, which actually the data could be already provided by their security solution. And because of those silos, there is inefficiency because the companies have to invest in new systems where they don't necessarily need to do that.
We have fast access to data and fast access to intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So we have the understanding, and I think what we wanted to focus on today is just making aware that there are systems out there not on your focus until today. There's like IP surveillance systems, IP security systems.
Correct. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, this is largely an IT audience that we have here today. When I gave the example of the botnet attack, obviously people could argue that those devices are on the internet, and that most of the audience here would have, let's say, all of their security devices behind firewalls. So perhaps they might seem less concerned, but part of our solution has the ability to test the strength, for example, of the password which are on the end devices, as well as to see what is the current firmware on the devices. And doing a few studies, what we realize is that 23% of our customers typically still have cameras that are utilizing default password within the system. 23%.
23.
Yeah.
23%. So this means every fifth IT specialist does not have it on his radar.
Well, I would tend to assume that because I don't think that we do find the same level of statistic around servers. We could also talk about firmware, where again querying our customer system, we realize that only 30% of them have the latest firmware on the cameras. I'm assuming, let's say, that servers would be much more up to date than that. So this is why we believe, let's say, that there's still a gap today between IT and physical security.
And it's a good example of the intelligent edge versus intelligent cloud. As everything gets connected, if there is a connection out to get the data, there is also connection in. So I think it's just a proof point around the transformation that we're all going through, even as IT professionals, that there are new things that we need to be alert to a higher level. And this is just a great example of that.
Okay, so I see. So what are the biggest vulnerabilities? What do you see in modern IP security systems?
Yeah, so one is the one around, let's say, the maintenance of the system. Another one is here through this example. So again, it's an article from Forbes. So this dates of 2018, where basically an employee from Google was able to connect to the access control infrastructure and analyze, let's say, the flow of data. And what they realized is that the data was encrypted, but it was non-random. So it was pretty easy for them to capture, let's say, some packet. That's certainly they realized that it was it gave them the ability to open and close doors. Now, all respect to Google, because I mean it's I'm sure
this could have happened to everybody, even to Microsoft. No,
we won't judge on that. But the problem behind that is that if you look at the investment cycle around physical security, they're very, very long. I mean, typically people will keep an access control for 10 years, for 15 years. So if you work your way backward, and then you start to understand, okay, when was this solution was actually developed? Probably it was developed in the 90s.
Yes.
And clearly, let's say, the issues that you have in the 90s
ancient system
are sort of different than the one that you have, let's say, in 2018. Absolutely. So, but the happy end to the story is that basically Google replaced the controllers, and basically now they're working on TLS, which is basically the latest encryption standard that we would recommend also for systems.
No, and just on a serious note, it is just a great reminder that it is even in the simplest things that we need to take serious as potential breach points, where I think because everything is just more connected, there are more entry points to the point of
more vectors of attacking.
Of casinos in Las Vegas getting hacked through a thermometer and a fish tank. I mean, who would have thought about that?
We have the big IoT topic in addition to that.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, I see. So we have systems meant for production at first and not for IT security at first.
Correct.
Right. So what do we learn from the Google attack?
Yeah, that basically you have different weaknesses in systems today. So here the objective is not really to go through all of them. You will have this presentation available after the webcast. So we talked a little bit about the controller, the issue around the encryption. I just want to raise your attention on the right side of your screen around the credentials. So basically those are the cards that we utilize to enter the building. You should know that there are really many different technologies behind those cards. But today, a lot of people are still utilizing procs, which is a technology dating from the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, to the point that today...
Procs from the 70s.
Yeah, to the point that today, if you look at market studies, 25% of the new cards being purchased in 2018 are still procs cards.
Wow.
And basically with a 20...
throw them away in a minute.
Well, yeah, you have to, well, first of all, try to understand, and this is part of, let's say, obviously the lesson learned here, but, first try to understand what type of technology you're utilizing. But certainly if you're utilizing procs, it should be an issue.
For access control cards too?
Yeah. I mean, this is basically what, might get you, let's say, through your front office door, or your HR door, or your research and development door.
So a system that is meant for security is not secure.
Well, because again, things have changed.
Yes.
And this is why it's so important, let's say, for the IT department to, rise and basically try to better understand, let's say, what is being utilized in their infrastructure. There's obviously a solution to that. So here, I mean, what you see is really it's open standard, so it's nothing specific to Genatech. But again, you'll have, let's say, the ability to go through this slide.
But as a CIO, you have to set up a system like that. It's not only setting up a firewall; it's a whole integrated and holistic control system.
Well, if you believe, let's say, that a firewall is going to keep bad people, let's say, from your system, then perhaps you don't need to pay attention too much to this. But I think that the reality is that a firewall will not protect you.
Of course not.
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
So basically here you can see the different standards that we would recommend, and on the credentials. So today Desfire is obviously the standard in terms of RFID card technology, but we also recommend biometric, and also we see a growing interest in mobile credentials, so ones that you would have, let's say, on your smartphone.
Mm-hmm. So how do data protection, data privacy laws apply to physical security systems?
Yeah, I think to start with, I think as a general comment at this point, at least for us in Europe, we've already heard about GDPR. And as a proud European, I can only applaud that Europe has decided to kind of take the forefront in terms of putting laws and regulations around how to handle data and data privacy. And at Microsoft, even though it is a European, the GDPR is a European initiative, and we have built that straight into our products and available globally. So again, it's one of those where, back to the point I started with, which is we run on trust, and trust is probably at the root of what we're talking about here, which is security. If you can't trust the system, then everything breaks down. When it comes to GDPR, we built that straight into the Azure platform and the Azure services. And again, here is a great example of Genatech as the specific industry expert, so that they can take that and focus their time on where their expertise is, which is to develop and implement secure systems.
So, and how do you do that? So what is Microsoft and Genatech doing to help customers apply and comply to those rules?
Yeah. So here, I mean, I'll go through one example. And I realized that, yeah. So I'll go through one example. So it's called Genatech clearance. Mm-hmm. So for those who are, let's say, intimate with GDPR, there's the Article 15, which is basically the right to access. So effectively, I mean, data subjects have the right to access to their information. So we saw that, let's say, as quite a challenge in the industry, especially that the European Union recommends that this should be done in a self-serving kiosk, so in a digital format instead of providing hard devices. So here it's really interesting to see how new regulation can be source of innovation. What we did is we use a solution that we had developed for the law enforcement agency, because they really have a huge amount of data coming in through the utilization of bodycam, and realize that this solution would be perfect actually for all of our customers. So what it is, it's basically a portal on Azure. It's absolutely agnostic to any video surveillance system, so it does not necessarily only work with Genatech, but works with any system in the market. And the idea basically is to upload, and obviously you would encrypt the information from your site onto this platform. Through the platform and the utilization of Azure Active Directory, you have a method to be able to invite people to be able to access the portal and to collect the information. What's very important is the notion of custody trail. So you could basically keep logs of all of the activities that have been done since uploading the information, so that you know exactly when the data subject connected to download the information, which is very important again for the data privacy law. And lastly, also you manage, let's say, the retention time of the information. So basically you say, okay, this information will be there for 30 days. If the data subject doesn't download the information, it will be basically removed and destroyed and not available anymore.
And it's such a great example, because I think morally probably most people would agree, yes, it's good to have these laws and regulations in place. I think the next question is, how do I do it as an end customer?
That's what I wanted to ask. Could you show us how that works in practice?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because there is also a little twist, especially with the video. So we're gonna launch the video. So what you have to know as part of Article 15, the video was launched. What you have to know as part of Article 15 is that obviously you also need to protect the other data subjects from a video. You have to protect their privacy. So here, it's basically, you're looking at a hallway in a school. You have the person with the green shirt, which will want to have access to his information. So basically, the school principal or the school security are going to move to clearance, and they're going to upload the clip that you just saw. Now, what is really, let's say, a huge operational cost is to, how do you hide the faces? How do you redact the faces from the... It can take hours. And this is where Azure steps in. So we're utilizing Azure Media Services, which is basically first going to detect the face, and then it's going to enable the operator to choose which face he wants to keep unhidden. And if for some reason, let's say one of the face was not captured, you can then manually, let's say, fine-tune the images. Fine. So the operator can then, see if everything is good. What he's doing there is going to invite the data subject for him to be able to pick up his video. So this is what the data subject is going to receive as an invitation. He clicks on that, has access to the case. Only the information pertinent to him is available, and basically he can see his video clip with himself, walking.
The other faces are blurred.
Exactly. And this is incredibly powerful. And I'm not going to say it's incredibly cheap, but what I can tell you is basically to to manage such a case is basically lesser expensive than to burn a DVD and to send it by registered post to the person,
which much more expensive, and not considering the whole amount of work I have to put in there.
Absolutely.
And the other concern is for a company to make sure that process is actually followed every single time. Right here, it's built into the system, so as a company that you are compliant, basically no matter who operates the system.
Yeah.
That brings me to our first poll for you in the audience. And don't forget, if you have any question to our experts here in the studio, just ask the questions and I'll address your question in the session. And don't forget, at the end of this session, we have a 10 to 15 minutes Q&A round, so questions and answering round, where you put your questions a little bit more in focus, in detail. But if you have any question now, just go ahead. Our first poll for you is now, how do you share video evidence within your organization? Via DVD, portable hard disk, or USB key? Via shared drive, cloud storage solution, for example, OneDrive or Dropbox, a purpose-built solution to manage and share digital video or image information, or maybe you say, I don't know, I don't want to answer that, I can't answer that. So just provide your click in the moment now, so that we have a first impression where you stand in the moment with your video surveillance systems. What would you say from your experience? How are your clients situated?
Our view from the market is that it's still relying very much on portable type of devices,
Really?
so DVDs,
Burning
USB
DVDs?
keys, USB keys, yeah.
Wow.
So again, this is where it would be interesting to see the tie with IT, because it's how they've done it, for the past 10, 15 years, and potentially they might not be aware that there are, let's say, other options available to them.
But they are. So one of the reasons we make this webcast is to show that there are more options, and using the cloud. I couldn't imagine when we first started the discussion there's anybody out there not using the cloud with a system like that. But okay, so we have the possibility for you to give us to provide your click in the moment. But what I'd like to ask now, what would be your immediate recommendations to access the risk of current physical security systems?
Yeah. So, depending on how much of an eye-opener or not, let's say the first part of the presentation was, if you're on the security side or if you're on the IT department side, is really to engage the conversation with the other group, basically. So start to communicate. From there, do a basic hygiene test of your system, of your current system. So, are all of the passwords been changed? Are those, let's say, hard passwords? Are the firmware up to date? Have you hardened the system if the vendor has provided you, let's say, a method to do that?
Yeah, this is what you mean with ask the right questions at the beginning, huh?
Yeah. Are you, encrypting, when you can, for example? So again, very important with GDPR. The whole notion of encryption, and then from there, you have to start to analyze, where you have, let's say, big gaps, I would say, and as you review, let's say, vendors to fill in the gaps, it's to see, how much you trust the vendors, and obviously this is the technology providers, but I would also say the integrators, the system integrators, which are, working for you. How much is cybersecurity part of their DNA? I would say.
Mm-hmm. What do we say? How is the cloud leveraged in today's IP security management systems?
Well, perhaps I'll let you
answer
I think, first.
And I think, and just as a thought to your question before, I think as we're seeing this transformation, the digital transformation that we're talking about in every single industry, including the security industry, the move away from on-prem, I think the examples we've just talked about makes it so clear that it is even in the simplest things where you can create vulnerabilities for yourself without even knowing. Yeah. And that's why our strongest recommendation, together with Genatech, is to move across into a cloud scenario as fast as absolutely possible. And what that means is, of course, our recommendation, not of course, but it is a full software as a service solution. Really taking out, as I said, the examples of the most trivial things, but taking those things out of the equation in terms of your own accountability. So really reducing the risk, making sure that any company can hold Genatech or Microsoft accountable to those maintenance pieces. And in the process, of course, reduce cost significantly in the process, because it is very cumbersome. There is investments in hardware and maintenance and all this stuff. But really, we talk about from the on-prem world of yesterday into the digital transformation of Industry 4.0. We also do realize that customers have different needs, and there's also a timeline here. And there might be concerns about moving to a full software as a service solution, full cloud solution on day one. And that's why we are providing different opportunities to make that a step journey along the way. There might also be other considerations. There might even be local especially with government agencies, they might actually have local laws and regulations that require them to have certain things happen on premise, which is why we've provided, you could say, the three simplest scenarios is infrastructure as a service. So whatever you see in blue is what you are pushing to the cloud.
So this is what we say are the options for the clients to use.
Yes, these are the options. And the two in the middle that have both orange and blue are what we would call hybrid scenarios. Yeah. And the one on the right is a full software as a service scenario. So, and this could be a journey over time.
So, but not to forget that the cloud is helping to manage security in a better way.
Absolutely, and that's just to clarify, that's why our strongest recommendation together for this is to go to a full cloud software as a service scenario, because that minimizes the concerns that you would have. I mean, most people that have a need for security, they have a different. They are professionals in a different space. Yeah. So why would they want to be security professionals at the same time? Yes. Leave that to the experts, and minimize your concern and cost. Yeah,
and use it. So could you bring us maybe an example, a use case where we can learn a little bit more how a company has gone this way? Yeah.
So there, I mean, I'll first explain a bit, how this does translate, for Genatech. So if we start on the right side, True Cloud would be really a full SaaS offering. So basically, you only see the sensors at the bottom, and we leverage Azure with our SaaS application.
Would you explain the expression True Cloud a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, so True Cloud is basically that all of the information resides into the cloud. So basically you pull all of the information and you put it onto the cloud. The difference is managed cloud, where we would be servicing the system, but the customer, for a reason X or Y, wants to keep the data locally. And typically, let's say cameras now have, let's say, SD cards that you can record locally, or you can use, let's say, a small NAS to do that.
Yes.
And then hybrid is what Soren, let's say, explained. So elements are left locally on the customer side, and it's leveraging, let's say, part of Azure, for example, for connecting, let's say, multiple sites and providing, let's say, a holistic view from a security operations center of the company's different sites. So, and then we have, let's say, the full on-premise, where basically, let's say, there's no connection to the cloud. So we can provide, let's say, all of the options.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so and do you have a special use case from a company?
Yeah. So the one that we selected, it's a company called Leap. So they're based in the Netherlands. It's an SMB company, but they have, let's say, 24 shops. And initially, they were, interested in video surveillance as a service, really as a mean to scale progressively their investment, because it was, a young startup, so they didn't want to invest lots of money in capital investment, but really take, let's say, more an operational expense approach to it. Now, the reason I've put impressive operational value is because Leap also has a very large call center that they utilize for customer service, for questions and things like that. And the beauty of the cloud is by connecting all of those stores onto Azure, you naturally federate them together, which means that somebody in HQ can easily see what's happening in the store in Rotterdam, in Amsterdam, in Utrecht, and they actually utilize that at the call center, so that once there are too many calls coming in, to check into the stores if one might be a little bit less busy.
Oh, great.
And they transfer the call then to the local store so that they can take care of the customer and provide it an overall better customer service.
Yes, this is what I wanted to ask. So at this point of discussion, we have the first result of our first poll. So we asked, how do you share video evidence within your organization? And you recommended DVD as in many companies. So 33% of our audience says DVD, portable hard disk, or a USB key. 17% say shared drive, 17% say cloud storage solution, and 17% say purpose-built solution to manage and share digital video or image information. Don't know, no answer 17% either. So it's a little bit focus on DVD, as you said. And did you expect that, Soren?
It's actually a little higher than I expected or hoped, but that only means that the solutions that Genatech built on top of Azure is hitting the right spot in terms of a need and a demand.
Okay, so second question for you, maybe at this point of discussion, what level of collaboration does your company have today between the physical security team and IT? Is there no collaboration? Do you say we consult each other occasionally? The IT department is part of the solution selection, or the IT department is responsible for the physical security system on behalf of corporate security? Please provide your click in the moment, just because we want us to discuss this point. It is very important that they are integrated a little bit more than in the past.
No, absolutely, and it's going to be more and more important. Let's say as we as we move forward, because again, I mean the cloud is all about better scaling, but reducing cost, and this is where the IT department can really provide a very consultative approach to corporate security. Eventually, also starting to, in our eyes, to own the management of the system. So we see this trend building up with our customers.
Okay, so I switched the pause a little bit.
No problem.
But don't worry about this. So we have another poll afterwards about assuming the cloud solution, and where the audience is going to prefer where they want the video data to be stored. So this is what we discuss a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I think I switch in this moment. This is my fault. Sorry for that. But on this point of discussion, what do you say? What does a modern IP security platform have to offer? What should IT managers pay special attention to?
So from our perspective, it's really three areas. So first of all, the platform needs to have the ability to bring in different type of sensors. Today, a lot of the security solutions are very single sensors focused. So you would have a solution for the video, a solution for the access control, a solution for the intrusion. You need to have, let's say, a platform that's going to bring all of that together. After that, there needs to be, let's say, intelligence to make most of that data and make the data relevant, qualified. And then the last bit is really to provide different options in the way the information can be displayed to the users of the system. Because somebody in security, somebody in IT, somebody in marketing is going to have, let's say, different needs, and as a result needs to view the information differently.
So you address the marketing department too?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really important to to maximize, let's say, the data. I mean, video systems could be perceived as a necessary cost, let's say, to protect, buildings, goods, and people. But there's a wealth of information there which can be very useful for the rest of the organization.
Okay, so this is what we didn't consider in the past. So the IP security systems or security system itself very often are considered as a cost factor and not bringing some value in addition to that. Is this correct?
No, absolutely. And I think the Leap example is fantastic. It is, of course, to be a cost reduction in terms of minimizing theft, whatever it might be. But to Jean-Philippe's point, that data can actually be used in a very proactive way as well by the sales or the marketing department. If you take the Leap example of retail stores, you can see the flow, you can see what works and what doesn't work from a store perspective, and actually use that to enhance your sales and marketing strategy at the same time. So it can become a very proactive sales and profit driving vehicle as well once you have the data and can turn it into insights.
Okay, so we have the poll question number 2.
Okay.
What level of collaboration does your company have today between the physical security team and IT? No collaboration, 17%. We consult each other occasionally, 50%.
50%.
IT department part of the solution selection, 0, and IT department responsible for the physical security system on behalf of corporate security, 33%.
Yeah.
So 50% is high, isn't it?
It's
So almost 70% no collaboration or only occasionally.
17% no collaboration, and
Yeah.
IT department not a part of the solution selection, 0. So, so this is what we see in the market all the time.
I mean, it's obviously there's a level of concern there, and again, we hope that some of the example that we showed today will provide food for thought, to start to connect.
Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about the new technologies and how we can benefit. Are we talking about mobile devices, how to integrate them?
Okay. But perhaps I wanted to first go over an example on around data democratization.
Yes, okay.
Well, yeah, and I think that, and this is actually more because we've already touched on a couple of these things, but really what Jean-Philippe has talked about, he's already talked about data silos. Again, the LEAP example is fantastic for this. Taking the data that have been in silos in the past, really bringing them into what we call data aggregation. So the first step is to get the data into one aggregate way that you can actually work with them, to take it from data into insights that are actionable. So the first step is to make your data available. Make sure it's not stored in silos in different parts of the company. And that means that all of a sudden you are able to not just react to the past, but can start creating patterns so you can make proactive decisions about the future. You can start using, whether you want to use machine learning or even AI.
Yes. Which is not possible without the cloud system.
No, and without having the aggregate data and the compute power of the cloud. So that's the next step. And really then to push this information and these actionable, making these proactive decisions available, but pushing them out to your full workforce, whether that be the lady in the call center or the gentleman in the retail store, pushing them back to the workforce and actually empowering them to make proactive decisions on the spot.
Yeah, to see where's some special service needed.
Yeah.
And that's when you start unlocking the value of data.
See,
That's
yes.
what we mean with democratizing the data, meaning the insights that come from it. I think I've been in the business long enough that certain information was only available to certain people at certain levels in the company, right? The finance department would only be the ones that have the key numbers about this or that. The sales department or the telesales department would only be the ones that had the precise stats about waiting times or what do people usually ask. And that's what we mean with democratizing, making the data available, pushing it out to every person in your organization, as appropriate, of course,
and enabling the
to enable them
CIO,
to make decisions based on that.
And enable the CIO just to deliver more value by systems and
Exactly.
not by sitting on the data.
Exactly.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's good. So you have another use case for that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, let's say, a few examples. So one here you'll see is much more oriented for the IT audience. So what we've done in our last release is to introduce the notion of dashboard. And basically what it is that you have a blank canvas that is going to enable you to build a view that is really pertinent to your business. So what you see here on the left side is, for example, statistics around what are the current firmwares that you have on the camera and the one that you should change, for example. You also have, let's say, the amount of hard disk recording that you would have on your network video recorders, for example. And then on the right side, what you see is a video of your data center, as well as some statistics. And this is, really the whole notion about data aggregation, where we're going to be going into your building management system and try to understand what is the temperature in your data center. And in this case, you have an orange element, which is the humidity. So it's not in red yet, but for some reason, something is going wrong. So you can proactively, go to your data center and try to understand why the humidity is rising. And then the other thing that you see in the middle, this is what we call the cybersecurity score. So what we do is we basically query your system and try to understand, for example, have you hardened your systems? Are your camera up to date in terms of firmware,
So if
in terms of password?
DDoS attack, you would notice it at once here.
So you would not notice the denial of service attack, but what you would know is that you've put, let's say, the right password on your camera, which should reduce very much the risk of denial of service. So we're not providing, let's say, not even a life insurance, but basically a guarantee that nothing will happen to your system.
Of course not.
But it's a little bit like. Unfortunately, on the street, if you have an alarm system and your neighbors, let's say, don't, typically you will be less visited than your neighbors.
The barrier is a little bit higher.
Exactly. So it's making things, more complicated. Yeah.
Okay. So this was the center, and what do we see on the left side of the dashboard?
So the left side there, it's more, let's say, statistics. To understand, for example, on the firmware, which one, which cameras have the right firmware, and perhaps which cameras needs to have their firmware updated.
Yeah, so back to the question: a system without using, for example, Azure as a cloud system is not imaginable.
So a system without Azure. So clearly, so Azure is going to bring value, depending that you are, let's say, on-premise or that you're fully in the cloud. Azure is going to bring incremental value as you go. So we have something which is called the Genatech update service. So it's fully hosted on Azure. And basically through Azure, we monitor, for example, the current firmwares that you have, let's say, on certain camera manufacturers, because we're adding them to the system. And Azure is going to provide you, let's say, the recommendation to say, okay, you should do, a firmware update. To go full cloud, there are still some limitation. On the access control side, I would say no, because the data is very light. So, I mean, there's no reason for people to go full cloud on access control. On the video, as everybody knows, it's, it's a data which is, which is heavier. And as a result, it's, sort of dependent on the bandwidth that you have, let's say, available to bring into Azure. So that will be, let's say, sort of a demarcation point as to, do you want to stay on premise? You're an airport, for example, you have 3,000 cameras. It's not going to be possible for you to bring all of this data onto Azure. On the other end, you're you're an enterprise. You have 100 sales offices across the world where there's, let's say, 5-6 cameras. You should move to Azure.
Okay, so on the one hand, we have greater security, we have a democratization of using those huge amounts of data. How far does that help to come to better business decisions?
Yeah, so here we come back to Soren's example. So on the left side, what you see in the window is basically a people counting algorithm. So it enables you to understand, how many people you have coming into the store and how many people you have exiting the store. So this is really interesting for security because, the more people they have in the store, the more they need to, to take into account the level of risk and eventually the number of guards that they have, let's say, on the floor that they need to monitor. But as you start to capture, let's say, this information over time, this is where we go into a solution that we call Retail Sense, but where you're going to be able to start to stack up this information and understand, what is the flow of people that you have in your store last week, for example. You can start to compare multiple stores. You can start to say, okay, I'm going to launch a promotion. What is the impact of that promotion? Looking at the historical data. So this is where the basic investment that you've done for your, security stuff turns into very valuable information for your business.
Great idea. So, all right. So at this point of discussion, I'd like to ask our audience how they want their video to be stored. And give me a second. The question is, assuming your cloud solution meets your corporate standards, how would you prefer your video data to be stored? On the cloud, in your data centers, a flexible model, or don't know, no answer. Maybe that's a quite good point here. And just provide your click now in the moment. What do we say? I think we should have convinced everybody, or not?
I have my feeling there, but I think we need to first let the audience respond. So it'll be interesting. So let's see.
Okay, so let's step a little bit further. We talked about this mobile question. How can you help to use systems like that in the cloud and video IP surveillance, IP security systems via mobile systems?
Yep. Yeah, and I think, just to kind of phrase that a little bit, I think at the highest level for digital transformation, what we are learning, because this is a learning journey for all of us, since we're in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, 4.0, whatever your preferred term for it is, we're seeing that customers are focusing on 4 key areas. It's either around engaging your customers, we talked about that with the call center, or it is transforming the product, the actual offering. If you've been building boilers for 2 decades, all of a sudden you have new opportunities. You can get that boiler connected, give your customers opportunities to actually manage it.
Additional
I think we would all love that.
Yes, yeah.
Or it is about optimizing your operations. That's a very natural one, I think, for all of us in the manufacturing, with the manufacturing background that Europe has. And the last one is about empowering employees. And we already talked about it a little bit, but I think where that gets really interesting is getting again in the spirit of democratizing the data. How do we get that all the way out to a mobile worker? It's easy to kind of grasp when it's somebody at the office that has a big screen or is close, but how do we get it all the way out to the mobile worker as well?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is obviously a perfect intro. I mean, this is where the new mobile experience. So again, this is something that we released about a month ago. So for anybody, let's say, accustomed with the type of screens that you would have in a security operations center, what we've done is we basically ported the experience to the move. And this is really driven, let's say, by a lot of customers, starting with the police, where they say, okay, we want our policemen to move outside the precinct. Yeah, I think that's the expression anyway. The commissariat, we say in French, but to go into the streets, to be closer with the citizen, but yet staying connected with their operation center to be able to react if something happens, to have, let's say, access to the video feed so that they can properly prepare in the situation, let's say, in which they're going to enter.
Sounds weird in Germany.
Does it?
Yeah, because these systems are pretty old in the public system for police. But it is another topic. I think the main idea is pretty good, just to enable them to make their service and the job a little bit better.
Yeah. And then what we try to do is to take, let's say, full ownership, to try to maximize, let's say, the utilization of the device. So what we've introduced also is that the ability for the camera of the mobile telephone to be used as a mobile camera. So again, this is very interesting for security guards, for police, eventually to witness a situation where cameras might not be available.
So we have body cams that could be integrated too.
Yeah, so body cams that could be, let's say, a method, or utilizing, let's say, the mobile. Which is nice with the mobile is that you have, let's say, different live connections, so that you can stream back live eventually to the control room if there is, let's say, an accident or something like that, real live images, so that the person in the security operations center can say, okay, yeah, we have, let's say, 2 people which are really badly hurt or whatever, and they can start to feed, let's say, live information back to the first responder. So
maybe with the soccer teams with the video proof.
So perhaps all of the players should be running around with that. Perhaps.
So good idea. And we have lots of data, of course, after that. And we asked you, assuming your cloud solution meets your corporate standards, how would you prefer your video data to be stored? Of course, on the cloud, 60%. Our audience is saying in your data centers, 20%, flexible model, 20%. No answer, 0. I think it's a clear evidence that your story is on track.
It's on track, but I'm assuming, let's say, that a large part of the audience here is from the IT side. Typically, when we have conversation on the security side, the conversation is slightly different. Security managers, for some of them, tend to feel that video information is more private than, for example, your bank account information, strangely. So there's still, let's say, a sort of a chasm or a gap that needs to be closed there to let the people know that, okay, at the end of the day, it's ones and zeros, that you have, let's say, your bank account or images. So there should not be, let's say, any concern having the right platform, of course, to have your information on the cloud. So this only reinforced to me, let's say, the idea from the earliest poll that there needs to be more collaboration between IT and the physical security teams to understand the options open.
How would you value the last poll when so many people say we want to start video on the cloud?
No, it's these are great polls, and really appreciate the active participation. And I think for me, just underlines the whole reason why we're here, which is, I think it's not many years ago we saw movies where the video that JP showed we thought was the future, and the future is here.
Yes,
it can be done.
Technology is here.
Technology is here, and the solutions are actually available today. And for me, it is about the trust. It is about the ability to actually focus your time, whatever your industry and your business is, to focus your time on that and not have to worry about becoming a security expert or a GDPR compliance expert.
Yes.
You can leave that to the full service that is available today. And that is a key point for me.
Service providers.
Yes.
They're much better in this topic. So when we think of the collaboration of Microsoft and Genatech and moving forward, considering artificial intelligence and security in general, what do we have to expect?
Do you want to start first?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know to that, like specifically, I think JP is more of an expert, but I think at least for us, and I think I started out with it, the key point for us really is around the trust and security and the availability of the Azure platform and of the Microsoft cloud services. And an example of that, as I said recently, we announced 2 data centers in South Africa. Just last week, we announced 2 others in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai. So again, we're actually serious when we take one. When we say one, you have to be able to trust both the security and the scalability, but also the availability, even in what I would call critical decision scenarios, which you've described some actually, even when in first responder, you could say citizen security scenarios.
Yeah, so I mean, I certainly, because we have a very active office in the Middle East. I mean, the fact that you are in UAE and Abu Dhabi is very exciting for us, because obviously we have GDPR in Europe, but I mean, in other countries, let's say they have their own data privacy regulation, and very often it's having, let's say, the data residing locally. So for us, it's it's an opportunity to bring this new data transformation in the physical security world closer to our customers. So this is very exciting that you're investing into that.
Yeah, and it's a good example of actually enabling customers to get all the benefit from a full cloud software as a service scenario, but not having to worry about the data sovereignty of their data residing halfway around the world. Now the data center is actually in, but they can still get all the benefits from the cloud scenario, but the data sovereignty isn't a problem, and latency for that matter. If you
of course, it's a big issue, especially for big enterprises.
Exactly, exactly, and also because it could be any scenario, as I say, any critical decision horizon scenario, whatever you want to call that, whether it's in a production environment or a safety environment, you want to be able to have.
We have been talking about, stepping a little bit back, we have been talking about security concerns for access control. Are there similar concerns for video surveillance?
Yeah, no, so absolutely. So, a lot of the elements that we spoke about are 100% on the access on the video surveillance side. I would say one that you might want to look into is how you can protect the privacy of people, but as you are filming the information. And there, basically, we're utilizing a solution that hide dynamically the faces of the moving objects in picture. It's actually the first GDPR compliant solution for video surveillance in Germany, so it has a privacy seal. So you have, let's say, this notion of picture, which is, let's say, slightly different than access control. But for the rest, it's password, firmware, encryption when you can.
Yes.
It's
But
sort of
the
very similar.
GDPR topic is very important, I think, because many companies don't have that on their radar system. They have to think about that, about blurring faces and so on. And many are using systems like that out of security reasons and not thinking about what is happening with the data when they have to put them out.
Yeah.
I think it was a quite interesting point. So what do we see on this slide here? Many seals where the Azure is one of the deepest and most compliant, most comprehensive compliance coverage of the industry. Do you have some examples for that?
Yeah, I mean, so here it's, all of the certification that basically Azure has. So for example, in the UK, the NHS is quite important if you want to go into the healthcare. So it's sort of, Vulge that, Microsoft has taken all of the right step, let's say, to meet, in this case, the NHS requirements. And that enables us then to be able to sell, and provide our solution in that space.
Yeah, that's
very important.
Pretty interesting. Yeah. So what does the audience have to do when they want to learn a little bit more about this topic? Do you have a clear call to action for them? Can they contact you directly?
Yeah, so we have a couple of proposals. So you have my email address here. So, please, if you want to pursue the conversation, send me an email, and depending on where you are geographically, I have a great bunch of colleagues, all over Europe, all over the Middle East, all over the world for that matter. And we talked also a lot about clearance. I invite you to go on that link. We actually enable you to test the solution for 45 days. So for all of the groups that still are utilizing DVDs and all that, it might be, let's say, a good way for you to explore, on how to meet your privacy regulation in an easy way through this solution.
Getting the most out of your IP security systems by leveraging the cloud. This has been a pretty interesting webcast. Thanks for that, Soren. Thanks for that, Jean-Philippe.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for participating and helping us with your answers in our polls. And stay tuned with Computer Woche or Computer Week as you like. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.